Broadcasting from the heart of the nation, in the Hoosier Media Network studios, the next generation in conservative talk radio. This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
No matter where you may be across the nation, so many great radio affiliates, so many great places that we are broadcasting, streaming, our podcast just going crazy all over the place. Welcome aboard. What a week it has been. Holy cow. We come on here. Usually we are feisty. We're happy. We're excited. We're go-lucky. And it is hard to do that after a week like we've had, really the last week and a half that we've had. I think that we are at a time where the political tide is turning in a way that we've never seen before. And we are at a pivotal point. And as the now late, great Charlie Kirk has said, that we are at a turning point in society. What direction we go is up to us, and I think it's where we have an opportunity to do something really powerful, really strong, really good, or we can go down a really dark, deep rabbit hole, and it's going to be unfortunate for society if that's direction that we choose to go to. We have a lot to cover today. I have a buttload of audio I'm going to try and cram into this program as much as possible. Also, bottom of the hour, Alex Rosado will be on the show. He's with Young Voices. He has a new article in Newsweek talking about political dialogue, trying to bring people back together, unity, and how we can all work together in harmony, at least to a little bit of a degree, more so than what we're seeing right now with the radical political violence. So that being said, welcome into the show, doing what we do each and every weekend.
We'll do it live.
That's right, here on the show. You can find us on our website, HoosierReason.com, HOOSER Reason.com. You can find us on there. Sign up for the newsletter that comes out the first Monday of every month. Also, if you want the podcast, we have our podcast on any of your favorite podcasting sites by just searching The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier. We have the great Dave, our producer down in Dallas. Welcome aboard, brother. Our Trumpy Bear, executive producer here sitting in the Hoosier Media Network studios. And Cornelius, our intern alien green head that's sitting right behind me on the stand as the alien is sitting there shaking his head saying, what the hell's wrong with all you? With the ridiculousness that we're seeing in the world today. And it's now that we are into the weekend, there's a lot of vigils, there's a lot of memorials going on in tribute to Charlie Kirk, radio host, podcaster, founder of Turning Point USA. And now, at least in my heart, we can begin the process of trying to heal. We can begin the process of trying to process, and we can begin the process of figuring out what's next in society. And I'll be honest, this one shook us. It shook everybody. It rattled us. And I don't know why it hit so different. I don't know. And I didn't know Charlie Kirk that well. I've had him on my radio program a few times, 2 or 3 times, I want to say. A few times when he came to Kansas with his Turning Point USA, his experiences at Kansas University, Kansas State University. He was here actually just a year ago. He was in Wichita, Kansas, where I'm based out of, with our flagship at the Hoosier Media Network studios with the tour of Tucker Carlson. If you remember that last year, right before the election, Tucker Carlson did a big wave across the nation, a great tour. He had Glenn Beck on the tour, Charlie Kirk. Well, Charlie Kirk was at ours here in Wichita, and I talked to him just that time. So right about the same time last year when that happened. And that was the last time that I had spoken with him. So I'd never met him in person. But just like what Rush Limbaugh was back in the day and what he was to talk radio, Charlie Kirk was the number one, if not the only, most influential movement with him and his Turning Point USA to rebrand, to fight for, and to sway the young generation into voting for Donald Trump. And for the first time in a very long time, the younger generation moving towards the Republican side of the aisle being challenged of what we get in the cesspool that is higher education spouting socialist, that I can't say on the radio. So Charlie Kirk was that movement, and he has left his imprint, and now he is, in my opinion, which I've been saying since this event happened on Wednesday, that he is now a martyr, and he will be a martyr. His movement will continue on, and every young person that has been raised by working with Charlie Kirk, fighting against Charlie Kirk, hearing Charlie Kirk, or maybe just now figuring out who the hell Charlie Kirk actually is going to be impacted by him and realize that, you know what, the rhetoric that we're hearing from the media about him being a racist and being this and being that, none of it's true. They're going to listen to his podcast. All the content's right there. You just got to sit there and listen to it. From him at his events, on his radio show, on his podcast, and everywhere else that he talks, it's very easy to find it. And all you have to do is listen. And he has swayed a generation to where it's, I think, in my opinion, going to be the biggest political movement that we've seen in a very long time. And how Donald Trump's assassination attempt a year ago influenced him winning the election in 2024. This assassination by a terrorist individual is now going to lead to a dominant victory of Republicans in 2026 in the midterm elections and the decimation of a Democrat Party that is desperate to find an identity. And that's the optimistic part of this. And I feel that we went into the weekend on Friday with the announcement from law officials, Kash Patel, the FBI, of catching the individual that ended up committing this horrendous crime, that we can begin the closure process, that we can mourn. As I said, we had the vigils going on, we had the memorials going on, and now we can begin to heal, we can begin to process, and we can figure out what's next. That's a big question, right? What's next? Because the movement's not going anywhere. And in fact, his wife, Erica, I don't know how she had the strength to make a speech on Friday evening, just days after this happened, but she did, and it was quite beautiful.
My husband laid down his life for me, for our nation, for our children. He showed the ultimate and true covenantal love. I will never, ever have the words to describe the loss that I feel in my heart. I honestly have no idea what any of this means. I know that God does, but I don't. My husband laid down his life for me.
So there it is. So Erica Kirk speaking on Friday evening. It was very emotional. It was a strong movement. And she said, Turning Point USA is not going away. They're continuing on with the tour. And can you imagine how many people are going to show up to that? They're continuing on with the podcast. Can you imagine how many people are going to want to tune in to hear what they have to say? The movement at Turning Point USA is not going anywhere. And in fact, it's growing. The martyr has been created. And now the shot that's been heard around the world leads us to the next question. What is next? And that's the conversation that we have to have in society.
What's trending today?
With our conversation, I think that's going to lead to the idea of freedom of speech. Because if you've noticed, there has been some very vile, horrendous, obscene comments that have been made all over social media. And this is the question that we have as Republicans, as conservatives. What do we do about this? We're all about advocates for freedom of speech. In fact, we've been criticized, we've been shunned, we've been shadow banned, we've been blocked on so many different platforms that's why so many are angry with the fact that conservative messages don't get out there the way they need to. And that college campuses and the general populace, it seems like, has been just in this bubble of you guys are fringe, you guys are radical, and this is the social norm that we accept. And anything beyond that we challenge or to talk about, you guys are the radical nuts on the fringe that we don't want to listen to. And it's time that Republicans and conservatives become a little bit more tough, so to speak. And I want to be very clear because right now they're going to be like, oh, Republicans are advocating for violence. That's not who we are. And in fact, I cannot think of a single action where Republicans have taken up an arm to do something this horrendous with a political assassination in any form. I can't think of any at all. And I know that Democrats are going to be like, what about the Minnesota legislators? That wasn't by a Republican. And you should probably do a little bit digging on that one as well, because that was not the case. We all condemn political violence. We condemn it to the nth degree. It is abhorrent. It is horrible, and it can never, ever, ever happen. If you remember about a year ago, under the Trump, when Trump was running after the assassination, or even before the assassination, there was an article that was written saying that because of how divided society is becoming, that political assassinations, like in ancient Rome towards their end, was going to become a norm. It was going to be accepted. It's just, guess what? Another politician died. It's going to be normalized. And we cannot let that happen. And that's what we're starting to see. But Republicans have to do more than just say the thoughts and prayers and that we're not going to react. We are going to react, but we're not going to react in a physical manner, which is what the Democrats, progressive socialists are hoping for. Andy, you're being divisive right now. I have never seen, and I got to be honest, and I hope that you are starting to understand the world that we're living in now. This life of gaslighting and of complete narcissism, that when we start calling out anybody through an ideology, that we're the ones being divisive and that are tearing the nation apart, because the criticism coming from the other side about Donald Trump's statement is off the rails.
On campuses nationwide, he championed his ideas with courage, logic, humor, and grace. It's a long past time for all Americans and the media to confront the fact that violence and murder are the tragic consequence of demonizing those with whom you disagree day after day, year after year, in the most hateful and despicable way possible. For years, those on the radical left have compared wonderful Americans like Charlie to Nazis and the world's worst mass murderers and criminals. This kind of rhetoric is directly responsible for the terrorism that we're seeing in our country today, and it must stop right now.
So apparently, according to the left, that is a divisive, controversial statement, and it makes me sick to think about that, because if you've listened to this program for any sense of time, if you're relatively new, we're usually a lot more happier than this, but it's been a really solemn week, so it's difficult to do, and we have to have a serious conversation about what we do here. That for some reason in this world, if you've listened to this program, you know that we've coined the term on this show that no one else talks about, which is the domestic abuser syndrome. And it came out last year after the assassination attempt against Donald Trump. What was the response from Democrats during that time? If Donald Trump wasn't such a hateful, evil person, we wouldn't have to do this. If Charlie Kirk didn't spread so much hate, we wouldn't have to do this. If conservatives weren't such bigots, racists, Nazis, fascists, we wouldn't have to be so hateful and violent against you. Meaning, just as any domestic abuser scenario in the country would be, why are you making me hit you? Why are you making me do this to you? I wouldn't have to do this to you unless you would just act the way I want you to act, you think the way I want you to think, and you do what I want you to do. It's the typical, stereotypical domestic abuser syndrome. And we are seeing that in society right now. How in the world are we to blame for divisiveness when we hear rhetoric like this constantly?
Especially in the earliest days of Nazi Germany, are the dangers that we need to react to now.
I mean, what are we going to do? We're going to wait until the jackboots are marching down the street and the brown shirts come rolling out? Our kids get enrolled in Trump youth?
Modern-day Gestapo is scooping folks up off the streets. They're in unmarked vans, wearing masks, being shipped off to foreign torture dungeons.
We're talking about the death of a constitutional republic. That's what happened in Germany in 1933, 1934.
That MAGA symbol has come to represent something. It is the new Nazi symbol. It is the new hood.
We'd be looking at a time in Nazi Germany where people ran around with signs like this new ICE sign.
You look back at history, business was silent in the 30s and 40s. Business didn't speak out in Europe, often didn't speak out in the U.S. against.
And Hitler described you could get Americans to give up their own democracy and to be ready for a fascist takeover.
There you go. Explain to me how we're divisive and we're spreading hate, we're spreading divisiveness when that was in the media for the past, I don't know, however many years. When Joe Biden stood with his stormtroopers behind him 2 years ago with the red lights, and he shows up and it says that the MAGA movement and MAGA is literally a domestic terrorist organization and Donald Trump is an extreme threat to democracy. When elected officials on the Democrats say that we need to get in the faces of Republicans, we need to shun MAGA members from public spaces, we need to punch them, beat them in the back alleys, we're going to bail out members of Antifa after they beat people in the streets and burn down buildings. And then when we say, wait a second, maybe we should tone down the rhetoric, socialist left-wing Democrats, then we're the ones that actually say, you're being so divisive. Really? What kind of gaslighting is that? Look, yeah, we need to all come together and we need to have a dialogue. As Charlie Kirk so eloquently pointed out every time that he went and spoke, he said that when dialogue and conversation ends, that's when violence begins. He was literally trying to have a conversation with people and he died. That is intolerance from an ideology, and it's got to end, and it's got to end now.
This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier. It's your Patriot on the Prairie. This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
So it is. What is up, my friends? Welcome back into it. Your Patriot on the Prairie, trying to rebrand that young generation, one radio listener at a time. So many great radio stations across the nation. And what a tough week we had, which we will get to, I promise. We will get to our commemoration of September 11th. And Dave, you've actually never heard our commemoration of September 11th. We will do that. We do it every single year. I've done it as long as I've been on radio, and it'll never go away because we can never forget that. So we will get to that here as soon as we can. Also, the next step in this debate of freedom of speech, the tribute to Charlie Kirk. Here's the thing. We are ardent supporters of freedom of speech, but we have to base those into the values of what we stand for as a nation, which is the conservative pillars of this nation: the right to life, the right to liberty, the right to private property, or the right to pursuit of happiness, if you want to look at the Declaration of Independence. As long as you're not infringing upon any of those, then you should have the right to really pretty much do and say whatever you want to. We have now people that are cheering and praising the death of Charlie Kirk, which, is that a violation of freedom of speech? No, not necessarily. It's vile and it's sickening. And I've said many times before that right now we have pure evil, pure darkness, and pure hatred that is boiling itself to the surface. And we made this claim when Donald Trump became president again, that already with the outlash that was then, that it was going to boil things out to the surface. It's been under the surface for a long time. And progressives, the Democrats, the deep state, the fill in the blank, whatever you want to call the powers that be that run this nation and that run the world, they allow things to stay calm and kosher as long as they're in charge. But as soon as we start upsetting that system, that's when things begin to boil up because we're ridding ourselves of the infestation. And that's what we're seeing right now. This is the shot heard around the world. So the next question is, will we accept that this is a new norm, or will we say enough is enough? And my prediction on this program,
Andy's prediction,
is the fact that this is going to be the absolute demise of the Democrat Party. This is my words to you, Democrats. I want to converse with you. I want to have dialogues with you, as Charlie Kirk was literally trying to do on college campuses. I want to have those conversations, because if we can have a conversation together, if we can pray together, if we can look each other in the eye and not through the social media of some type of talking point and bumper sticker argument and the vileness that we see on social media, if we can look each other in the eye and have a conversation and pray together, then we can disagree on issues, but we won't hate each other. Because what happens? Ignorance leads to hatred. Hatred leads to violence. Violence leads to war. That's the system, and that's the progression that we've seen in society forever. And right now, that's what we're continuously seeing.
You know, Charlie was someone who once said, guns save lives. After a school shooting. Charlie was someone who was willing to debate and downplay the death of George Floyd in the hands of Minneapolis police.
I think he called him a scumbag.
Right, have no regard.
Okay, so that's Ilhan Omar. I can't listen to any more of it. It's disgusting. But this is what is infesting the Democrat Party right now, and they will be a demise. We saw not just a couple weeks ago, voter registration for Democrats are down over 2 million nationwide. Republican registration up 2 million over them, with a 4.5 million voter discrepancy between the two right now. Non-political people around the world, not just in the United States, but around the world, are looking and seeing what's happening and saying, I don't know anything about the Republican Party. I might even agree with the Republican Party, but the Democrat Party right now is not doing anything to fix this. They are vile, they are hatred, and this is their only solution, which is to eliminate their opponents. With the attempted opponent elimination of Donald Trump and now eliminating Charlie Kirk. And even though Democrats have come out and said violence is bad, we got to condemn this type of political violence, why is there political violence happening? It's the clip that we just played in the last segment, which was, you're a fascist, you're a Nazi, you're a threat to democracy. This guy that killed Charlie Kirk was a socialist that hated Charlie Kirk and thought he was fighting a war against freedom versus tyranny. He was a warrior that thought he was doing the right thing because of what has been instilled into his brain from politicians and from the mainstream media. And Republicans, this is our message for what we have to do moving forward. If this is going to end, it's not just about we're just going to sit back and wait. We have to call them out and say, you have to take it a step further and condemn all of that ridiculous rhetoric.
This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier. Truth, reason, and common sense. This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
It is the Voice of Reason. Great to have you here for another weekend. As always, want to tell you about my friends over at Americans for Prosperity. As you know, that they were instrumental in the passing of that one big beautiful bill just a month or so ago. 4th of July is when that one signed on 4th of July with President Donald Trump. Now we're getting ready for the 250th birthday of the nation. What does that mean? Yeah, that means that we are celebrating the greatness of this nation. And I'm telling you, with this turning point, so to speak, pun intended, the turning point that we are seeing in this nation right now, that we are going to see America better than it's ever been before. I'm the eternal optimist. Even with horrible tragedies that I still honestly are a bit shocked from, I can't quite wrap my head around from. I've seen things online that I never have thought I've ever wanted to see or never did want to see. that I'm still optimistic in the direction this country is going. And I'm hoping that this is a wake-up call where we've shaken ourselves out of some type of sleep and said we have to start acting and do something different right now in this nation, or else we're going to be in a lot of really bad shape. So the 250th birthday coming up right around the corner, and it is going to be the best celebration ever. And Americans for Prosperity, they are all over it, baby. They have their campaign going on right now, which I want you to check out by going to takeonesmallstep.com. Takeonesmallstep.com. Very easy. Go there. They are showcasing and highlighting and educating about the average American, you and I, all throughout history that has stood up and risen to the challenge and done the right thing at the right time to make an impact in society. And I'm just throwing a wild guess out there, probably going to include Charlie Kirk in there at some point, somehow, with this recognition. So takeonesmallstep.com with Americans for Prosperity. Let's get ready for the 250th birthday. Let's move forward in the right direction, and let's make sure that political violence, political assassinations is not a new social norm, but it's going to be rid of in this year so we can celebrate how great the nation is and how unified we are, at least more so than we are right now, for our 250th birthday in this nation with our friends over at Americans for Prosperity. All right, there's so much more to talk about. And I always, as you know, being the eternal optimist, I like to focus on the positivity, because while there's a lot of absurdity out there right now and a lot of division, there's a lot of positivity and a lot of unity as well. And not just in the nation, around the world. Have you seen this video? This is from South Korea. So, we are Charlie Kirk is what they're chanting. That was in South Korea, a protest against China. I guess some needing, visas to go into China, or battling against concerns about China and North Korea partnering up on something. I don't know what the protest was about, but there's protests in South Korea. There's protests in the UK. There's protests in Canada. There are movements around the world with this shot that shook the entire world. There's a post from Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna on her social media as well, saying that since Erica Kirk spoke on Friday evening, that there's been a post in a conversation internally from Turning Point USA that we've had 18,000 new chapter requests to start up a Turning Point chapter around the country. We've had 9,000 college chapters and 1,100 high school chapters prior to this. This is the Turning Point. So in all, they've had about 10,000 in total chapters between college and high school, and they've had a request of 18,000 brand new ones. This is the turning point that we need, and this is the winning situation that we have. So well done on that. That's really awesome. Let's get to our guest here to talk about some of this and so much more.
Let's go to the Hoosier Media Hotline.
That's right. We can break this down. What does it mean for freedom of speech? What does it mean for dialogue? What does it mean for bringing the nation together moving forward? Really happy to have on the show from Young Voices. Happy to have on here Alex Rosado. Alex, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing all right. Thank you so much. How are you?
Yeah, very good. Thank you for coming on the show. Is this the wake-up call that we needed, the shot heard around the world, that we can finally say, hey, maybe we should stop the ridiculous divisiveness and start having conversations again together?
Well, I would certainly hope so, and it has to be stated, let our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, let the soul of Charlie Kirk rest in heaven. It is an absolute shame what happened on Wednesday. It should have never come to this, and it is resemblant of a larger gulf that has unfortunately swallowed a lot of people, my generation, millennials. Truly, it's become an epidemic in America that we are no longer able to have and foster civil dialogue, especially for Charlie Kirk, who was someone who recognized the potency of my generation to come and take the conversation to them, as opposed to being passive recipients in a culture that doesn't respect them. This is the result that we want to leave for our generation and for America? Certainly not. We can do a lot better than that.
Yeah, we can do a lot better than that. I'm right there with you as a millennial myself as well, in 36. Our generation, I apologize for our generation all the time, Alex, because we started some really stupid trends. A lot of our generation, and this is obviously a very big generalization here, but we grew up at the participation trophies. We grew up starting the Tide Pod challenges. We're the last generation, Alex, you and I, is the ones that grew up with no cell phones, no crazy technology in front of our face all the time, to now we have it all over the place and we can't get away from it. And back in the day, we used to be able to dialogue. We used to be able to have a conversation. We could disagree with each other. But now it's, if you're a conservative, you're a Nazi, you're a fascist, you're a totalitarian, you believe in a dictatorship, you want an authoritarian with Donald Trump, and therefore we're justified in coming after you, which is what we saw with someone like Charlie Kirk, who, like you said, he was literally on the front line doing the conversation. If you disagree with me, let's go into the cesspool of higher education. Let's bring someone to the microphone and let's have a conversation. That's what he was doing, and he got killed for it. How do we find unity and try and bring a conversation to people that don't want to dialogue with us?
Well, certainly, if you look at the reactions, and you spoke of this beforehand about mainstream and legacy media, even in the aftermath of this horrific massacre, The Atlantic has a contributing writer that said that Charlie Kirk this morning was, quote, a white supremacist whose life purpose was to discriminate against people who were not straight white Christian men. Matthew Dowd of MSNBC was fired for suggesting that Kirk and his rhetoric were responsible for his own death. So even in the midst of national tragedy, and it's even an international tragedy, you're seeing protests now in South Korea. You're seeing protests in Britain, all of them declaring we are Charlie Kirk. These people want freedom of speech, but not just only that, they want to listen. They want to have conversation and substantive dialogue, which has unfortunately been shadowed and overshadowed by a lot of these failed institutions that run outside of the media. For example, Congress has an 18% overall approval rating because it's not only slow in not doing its job, but the amount of substance that it produces doesn't affect the most people that it can. Even with higher education, these so-called vessels of academic prestige, they've divided Americans. They've had agendas that are woven with political wokeness in many regards, diversity, equity, and inclusion standards for admissions and enrollment that have divided a lot more people than have brought together. So really it is a top-down approach that has failed a lot of Americans, and as a result, the masses get a lot more fractured and are put in an uproar about it.
Yeah. I go back and forth here, Alex. I keep going and saying, hey, we're seeing us more divided than ever, which we are. And there's a fringe that have nothing to do with dialogue. That's the Antifa members. That's this individual that did the shooting, the socialist that was a member of Antifa. It's the Ilhan Omars. It's the AOCs. It's the crazy radicals that have a loud voice. But I honestly, truly believe that there may not be as many of them as what they say, even though, you know, Bernie Sanders and AOC shows up to a fight oligarchy tour and you get 10,000 people to show up to it in certain places. That I don't think overall that mindset, that group is as big as they say they are, because since the election, we've seen 2 million less registered Democrat voters, people leaving the party. We see more than 2.5 million Republicans turning to us, and new Republican voters in the nation right now. We see non-political people that have never been involved in politics, social media influencers that talked about barbecuing and talk about pop culture, that are coming out and saying, what the hell is wrong with you Democrats for allowing this? I don't know these platforms, but I don't want to be associated with that party over there. Alex, while we're divided and more hateful right now than ever before, and we're seeing some really nasty, vile stuff on social media, is this the demise of the Democrat Party? And do you think this is the wake-up call for them to say, maybe we should change this rhetoric? Because we may agree with all the hateful rhetoric that's happening, but we're losing voters because of it, and we have to do something different.
I think that speaks to a much larger issue of how do we talk and reach people who refuse to listen, who refuse to cooperate, who refuse to have joint investment in the future of this country. And especially a lot of statistics that have come out under the previous administration showcase exactly what kind of adriftness my generation and similar generations have faced as well. In terms of mental health, 83% of people in Gen Z are more likely to report anxiety issues. In terms of economic insecurity, they say that financial resources are a barrier to their future goals. In terms of jobs, there's a lot less employment among Gen Z people. That was reflected in the most recent jobs report, but it was indicative of public policy and economic policy that failed us. In terms of patriotism, too, only 41% of Gen Z respondents say that they were proud to be an American. So you have a lot of conflicting and confounding problems that exist within, especially the youngest generation, that should be energized to fix this, but unfortunately that isn't the case. And especially, again, when you have these top-down institutions that really don't play within the favor and address these problems, you're having a cycle of not only apathy, but it's digging us further and further into the process where it seems to be that it's difficult to get ourselves out, whether it be Democrat, Republican, or otherwise.
Yeah, it's a really great point. We're talking with Alex Rosado. He's with Young Voices as we talk about the ways that we move forward here. You mentioned talking and dialoguing with people who don't want to dialogue. It seems to be a deeper issue, and we got to take a break here in just a minute. But when we come back, I want to talk about how we address that. Obviously, there is a system in place that's been going on for a while that maybe we missed, maybe we didn't focus enough attention on. Maybe we just didn't care or didn't think it was as big as what it really was. But the K through 12 system, the higher education system, the cesspool where they've rid themselves of any positivity of the idea of capitalism, any positive idea of freedom, of the Constitution, the way it was intended to be, and then this focus on the socialist movement in this nation that has brainwashed this generation to be so vile, hateful, and intolerant. And we got to find a way to change that. How do we open up minds to listen to opposing views and still love each other but may disagree on what we do about it? We'll do that when we come back. Stay here.
This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier. Where Hoosier-holics gather every week. This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Yeah, welcome back to one segment left for this hour as we wrap things up for the hour here on the Voice of Reason. I swore to myself I was not going to get all emotional today and get all sad. Well, not sad. In fact, the emotions that I'm feeling today are of optimism, of patriotism, of love, and seeing the response. What's bringing me to tears today, actually, after the mourning that we've seen for the past couple of days, is now the healing process can begin, the mourning process can begin. But the outpouring of support, not just in the United States with 18,000 new Turning Point chapters that want to get started up. That's insane, man. That's awesome. That's great. But watching the outpouring, as we mentioned, these rallies going on in South Korea where they're chanting, "We are Charlie Kirk." I mean, that's incredible. Then we see, I just saw during the break here, I was watching these videos of the UK rally. There are, 100,000 plus people that are out there. In New Zealand, they're doing whatever they do, kind of like with the Hawaiians, where they do their chant, their growls, their crazy face. It looks like a war chant thing, but they're doing it as a tribute to Charlie Kirk. That stuff gets to me. When Kash Patel, FBI director, wrapped up his press conference on Friday after announcing they got the guy, and they said, "Charlie, we'll see you in Valhalla," which is essentially heaven for the warriors, when he literally died being a warrior on the front line there. That's when I broke. And seeing these now, I'm emotional now, and I'm just trying to hold it together for the radio show. I'm emotional, but in a good way, in a positive way, because of the outpouring. As you mentioned, we're talking with Alex Rosado. He's with Young Voices, and you can see his latest article in Newsweek discussing this issue. Alex, this is a movement worldwide where we're saying we're not going to tolerate this crap, and things are going to start changing, it seems like.
Right, and especially with some of the outpours and reactions for what you're seeing, especially in contrast to a lot of other reactions that you've seen with political violence. We're not being in Los Angeles throwing concrete blocks at police cars. We're not up in Minneapolis looting stores over there. We are holding vigils. We're holding our loved ones a little bit tighter today in the promise that we will fix whatever this situation is that's going on in America. And the way that you get your way out of it is by forging the ideals that Charlie Kirk fought and died for. And it's these three. The first is free speech, because you're going to need substantive and allowed dialogue to form, especially on college campuses. 88% of college students self-censor themselves or contort their views to succeed. Especially among my generation, we have an authenticity crisis. And we need to bring that back to allow for not only expression, but able to get ourselves out of this cultural and social rut that we found ourselves. The second is individual liberty and responsibility, because meaning and purpose aren't endowed to us by a government or by a media agency. It's greatness embedded within all of us, and it is intrinsic to the American identity. We pick ourselves up and we fight. We get out there and we be involved. That is how we make our situations work for us, as opposed to relying on other institutions that have failed to do so. And the third and most important is this: a religious founding, because a proper moral order cannot exist only if you have a belief in God, because secularism leads to social power struggles. And if there's no moral foundation, you get things like political violence that claimed the life of Charlie Kirk, that almost claimed the life of President Donald Trump twice last year, and other types of situations that are absolutely abhorrent and needs to be discouraged. But if we have faith in ourselves, in our community, in our country, in our Lord, that is the way that we bring back the American spirit for the next 250 years and beyond.
Amen to that. We bring back foundational values. We bring back patriotism. We bring back that belief in that higher power. We bring back that structure in society, and we can see ourselves flourish. We have to get back to that, and I think we will. The younger generations behind us, Alex, are way more conservative than our generation has been, which is really encouraging. We got about 30 seconds left here. Last question for you. The assassination attempt on Donald Trump helped him win that November election last year. Did this assassination just win us the midterms next year in 2026, do you think?
It's going to galvanize a lot of folk, especially, as you mentioned beforehand, TPUSA chapters popping up all over the country, high schools, colleges. 18,000 new entities are being formed. This is going to create strongholds not only of just conservatism, but a rebringing of faith, rebringing in social bonds, and helping people understand that a lot of these dilemmas with mental health and economic insecurity and political violence, they are not going to go out. In terms of us having more specialized values, shared heritage, cultural cohesion, that is what we need. That is what we'll fight for. And that is the America that still exists and will bring back.
That's what we're going to do, my friend. And you're on the front lines doing it yourself, and we appreciate that. God bless you, my friend. Keep up this fight. Alex, let's get you back on, and let's do it again real soon, brother.
Thank you so much for having me.
Hey, you betcha. Great conversation. I am optimistic about the future. It is disheartening, but we have some closure. We can begin to heal, and let's make this bigger and better than ever before. We, my friends, are going to make this insanely bigly, and I can't wait to that happen. We got a lot more to get to later on. Back at it before you know it. It's the Voice of Reason's Weekend Edition. Stay here.